I'm going to go ahead and start recording, and then we'll just let people kind of trickle in. I'm just going to go initially to our dashboard and then go into the class and look at what's ahead for session 7 today. A reminder, session 7 is before session 8, and session 8 is the midterm point of our semester. And then after that-ish, we have our spring break week, so we're easily right at half point. All right, we'll scroll down to 7. And I have a session 7 agenda. It used to be a thing that I did, and I just copied it from an older time into here, and it's pretty similar this time. Sometimes I do that to organize my own thoughts. So anything extra that I wanted to talk about while people are still joining us. Kitchen and bath lines. I know we talked about that in the session 6 video that I put up that was recorded while I was gone. And I just said that 108 students can use their best judgment. I'm giving them some packets this week, and I forwarded those packets to Professor King from when I taught kitchen and bath, because I used to teach that kitchen on my own for a number of years. So I had extra information that I felt was helpful that she might not have had at her disposal that'll make understanding kitchens and baths even easier. And then I said it doesn't matter for my 115 only people because they don't need to be as specific. So it's just extra stuff for those 108 students. But of course you might want it, and a 115 person might be going on in the future. So download the packets if you feel so led. But really, we're not going to do half-inch plans the same way as the other people would. NKBA dimensions, let's see. Heather, are you here already? Yep, Heather's here. Okay, so Heather should have and did, I think Cheryl confirmed, give the half-inch, well, really inch measurement dimensions for kitchen and bath out to my space planning people. And then for my 115 people, I think we can use them for floor plans, but I don't feel like we ever do 3-line dimensioning necessarily for our actual drawings. So again, I might put that file up for you to download, but we're not using it this week in my class. Text copying from file to file. We don't use the design center very much anymore, but it still exists in CAD, and I might show that tonight. And then non-annotative objects, a fixed size or scale that's calculated based off a scale when plotting a drawing. We're going to talk about text tonight in more detail. I said at some point you couldn't just use my lovely text I've given you. You have to understand how you might create a text or create a dimension or a leader line. And I wanted to try that tonight. I will say I'm not extremely organized for tonight. It's the first night that I feel I have no idea how this is going to end up. So we'll see what happens. There'll be plenty to do regardless of if we even get to leader lines. That's the only thing I feel a little shaky on sending you into without knowing how the book teaches it. I did record the pages where it's found in this book. I just haven't done it from there. And then there's kind of one type of scale dimension. I also included another one under the homework. So if we go back to our modules, 7, the assignment is kind of packed full of information. So in our book, I said I wanted you to read 4-36 to 438 because this will talk about line weights. And this is something I personally choose not to discuss just because it was never useful to me personally in the field. What the book will talk about, and it doesn't in that little section that I picked out for you, actually, it does this part later on in the book. While we are using the grayscale colors at the bottom, so like the 252, 255, those things are usually used mostly for solid hatching and not even for lines. The colorful things like red, green, yellow, blue, those designated standard colors, they have thicknesses that are assigned to them by the CAD software. So red might be thicker than yellow, and yellow might be thinner than both blue and red. And then when you go to plot them, they plot at designated line widths. And you might use that at an architectural firm, but we very rarely worry about line widths outside of like 0.5 thickness like I did on the site plan, or if you wanted to show emphasis in something. And in that, we can just change the line weights and keep it all gray and have it very consistent. So I choose not to do that. The book has kind of an architectural emphasis. It will talk about that. So I just wanted you to see that and have a little snippet from those pages of a basic understanding of the difference between red and yellow and how that might look in designing a window, for instance. 4-42 to 4-52 is talking about annotation, text, and dimensions. And I may or may not still have you create any text or dimension styles that are mentioned in that chapter on top of what I'm doing today. I'm kind of shortcutting it again today. I just want to show you all the tools inside the text editor and then have you change something very basic to the text editor using a text that's already set up for you in the file. 4-55 to 4-58, multi-leaders, create their multi-leader. And then we'll look to see what's going to happen today with my multi-leader and if I have to push that off to another time. So below that, in order to complete the homework and kind of follow along, you're going to want to download all of these files. They're D-size sheets. These will be the sheets that you're creating for the week. So we've gone over a couple times how to create that architectural D-size layout at the bottom of our AutoCAD. We'll review it again a couple more times to create these sheets and label them. And we're also doing a new sheet tonight, the reflected ceiling plan. I'll not open it so you can see it. So this is our reflected ceiling plan, and we're going to have to draw it then, right, in order to put it on a sheet. So that's also listed under our assignment a little bit further down. Sorry, my dad is blowing up my phone. All right, so we see we want to download these documents, and then first step is create that reflected ceiling plan so we can put it on a document and we're working in a good order. So I'm going to start there tonight. Little housekeeping things, if you remind me at the end in some of your homework feedback. The section drawing had a little nuance to it, which I think Heather, were you able to post about the midpoint, right? I didn't look. So the midpoint, okay, so the midpoint wasn't exterior building overall midpoint on the right side. It was the midpoint between the two columns because that's where the highest peak of the roof really is, and it's just slightly off. So it makes the alignment a little bit better, and it will make the overhang on the exterior sides of the building more consistent. I think it's still like a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch off, depending on how your dimensions are set up to read, but it's not bad, and it gives you the overall idea. I accepted both this week and then was like, good, because I was more concerned about the cutouts of where the doors and windows were, if you got your fireplace in the right place, if everything was kind of snapped accurately and you understood how that was working. And I could tell that by if you drew up the columns, and I could tell that by the exterior wall thicknesses and all of that stuff. So I was really lenient. I was gone, and it was also my mistake. I was not thinking when I said exterior. I really wanted that midpoint between the columns. So I didn't mark off for it either way. If there were some discrepancies and things that I thought were kind of intuitive, like pulling up those walls, I would have marked off for it. I only did -2 points instead of -5 for any corrections while I was gone, because I was gone and I'm not trying to kill you before this midpoint in our semester. So I also didn't grade, like if it was 4 to 5 and you had the same mistake in the later one that I hadn't graded yet, I didn't take off for those points doubly. So those things will change after I'm caught up, probably by the end of tonight, grading everything for everyone across the board in AutoCAD, and it'll go back to, I don't know, it made me thinking 3. 5 is a little harsh at this point, but they're all repetitive mistakes. They might be stuff we've learned in the first couple of weeks. And then if those mistakes continue to show up from there on out and aren't corrected, like I'm asking in my comments, so please do read the comments. If you can't read the comments because you don't know how to get to them, which is a thing, then let me know, because I don't want to see you keep getting behind with these mistakes that are counted off doubly as they continue on. So we'll come back to the section when we get to that point in the reflected ceiling plan that makes sense why the midpoint needs to move. It's not a huge move, so it's the ceiling that's moving, and yes, it would affect your hatching. You could really leave it I'll show you how minimal of a change it is, and it's up to you. It's probably more important for people in space planning than people who are not, and we'll look at it as it relates to reflected ceiling plan and get to it at that time. So, reflected ceiling plan. Tonight, I'm going to be Miss Melissa Weldy, and I'm going to use her file, so I'm thinking like a student. I have all the same layers as a student, and I've got kind of the setup of what you might have going on with some blocks and everything. So in order to create this reflected ceiling plan, you're going to need to move some stuff over here. I like to have it right in this pocket here so I can kind of align things still, just like pulling, and I want you to do it tonight so you can understand the mistake with the midpoints of this building and how it was off, but also how looking at your section helps you understand your reflected ceiling drawing, just how looking at your floor plan helps you draw a section. So let's pull this stuff all the way over to the left or down. I'm just going to move it with my move tool out of the way. And now I have a good size spot. So what's great about the layers as we evaluate our PDF file for our reflected ceiling plan is it looks like it's the same thing, minus my doors and windows showing, adding a couple of random lines, and then some hatch work, and no porch or patio deck stuff going on. So who knows why there are no windows and doors showing on this plan? For the
windows don't go that high.
Exactly. Very basic.
Or is that it sounded so obvious, I wasn't sure.
No, yes, I love it. It is obvious, but I don't think everyone's always thinking about how the 2D plan is relating to the architecture. So yes, the cut plane for the windows, they don't go that high, or when we're looking at the windows, this is the framework above it. So it's not the opening. We're now at a high enough cut point in our building to show things on the ceiling that sure, we might want to know where the windows are relative to certain things so we can place things on our ceiling, but we're just seeing the build outs of the framework of those windows. At the very most, some of them we would and some of them we would not, but traditionally we can show them, but we want to hatch them since we're not seeing the full opening. All right, so we have that hatching in there, and I have another document that I've supplied for you that tells you how to hatch those things. So if I go back into here and I go to create a reflected ceiling plan, the other one I had clicked this one first, so that's showing you a completed sheet, your reflected ceiling plan. This one says text on it. All right, so this has instructions, and it tells me the size and angle of my hatch, and it tells me solid versus patterned. And then we've already done all this work in here. This is just a reminder that even on this one, we're going to show the pipe chases. If you're in 108, you could eventually end up solidifying some of that because it might be over top, and that's just helping you to understand the pipe chase. But I'm fine with, for my class, it looking like this. I'm fine with the people in 108 leaving it looking like this. This is just how I want it. So those are just notes we've had from before. These new lines are different. They come from our section drawing, and then the information on the hatch is given up here. So let me look at basic drawing before I even have to hatch anything, of stripping it down and copying it over so I can move on with my life. So I've got Melissa's Happy Boathouse right here, and I'm just going to selection tool it right to left so I get the whole thing. Well, you know what? That's too much information, right? I don't want this deck and this patio. So luckily for me, she's done some beautiful work with her layers, and I can just light bulb it away. Okay, that's great. And then I also don't need the doors and windows. Now I had turned it off from opening her thing earlier, but it was empty space that I'm going to be hatching. So if I could, I'd like to turn the doors and windows off. If for some reason you don't have the same layer types of things going on, we can just delete them out and draw connective lines so that we have area for us to hatch. If the hatching gets wonky because deleted them out or something, you can create a solid rectangle always closes a hatch. So if I put a like, she has really nice conjoined lines, but if this ended up being empty for some reason because you had trimmed it off and deleted it, but you didn't put your windows on or something weird, you can always create a solid rectangle, which ensures your hatch is going to stay away from that boundary. If you're having problems where your hatch is trying to hatch through everything after you do this change or turn layers off, then just add rectangles wherever those openings were so that it will solidify your hatch outside of that boundary. So this is great. This is a good start to what I want to do. I'm going to have to add a couple of lines because if we notice like here where the doors are, if I look on here, I'm just closing off that gap. And then at the windows, I'm just closing off each of those as well. So I'm going to minimize this and I can grab my line tool. Now she conveniently was last working on a wall and I think that's probably pretty legitimate. We copied over the main walls for the floor plan, so there's no problem with us keeping that as our layer, and we can just close off this so that it can be hatched. Close off our bottom window so it may be hatched. We're going to grab our line tool, close off our door, and that really, I think, closes it off. Now, each of you are different. You're different on, I haven't been evaluating lots of overlapping lines. There hasn't been a ton, but you might find when you turn stuff off, you have like little things like this. And I'm not looking to do that or grade you off for that, but just delete that because we don't need it. We want a nice solid hatch on the whole thing. So if you have little segments or you have something left over from the line layer behind a window or a door, delete it off so you have a nice clean rectangle. All right, so I've got a good start and I'm ready to copy this over. So I can copy it. And really I might have done a silly thing and I really should have copied it first. So I'm sorry. I am kind of like a little floofy tonight. So I can delete out all those 3 lines. And then when I turn on her stuff again, so we turn the windows on and we could turn our deck and patio on and her stuff is all fine because the layers were off. And then over here, we're fine because we've copied what we wanted to copy. So that's what you should have. It shouldn't affect anything because you're controlling your layer management. I'm going to pull the chat down. Okay, I don't see anyone in the chat yet. So now we've got this extra copy with what we need. We could probably check out what our hatch needs to be. Looks like this guy had something in him. And maybe this guy. Maybe little things. So what I can do then is go to my PDF with the instructions. And I'll zoom in on this guy for you. So it says make the layer hatching, which you guys have, and make it current to add your hatch. For solid, do the solid hatch, and for angled, we're doing ANSI 131, hatch pattern 12, rotation 0. So 12 and 0, 131. I'm going to do the harder one first. So I can type in hatch. That's my favorite way to get to it. What's my other way to get to it? It's up here, right? So right here is my little box under my draw panel. I could type in hatch, or I could just click on that box, and then I have the ANSI 131 here. 12 is the size. If you don't have it, we just backspace it and type 12 and enter. There's no rotation changes, so this can all stay the same. Let me go back though. She was on a wall. I've got to make sure my hatch is on my hatch layer or hatching layer, whichever one you want to do. Let's do hatching. I like her color for that a little bit more. So then if I go back to my hatch, I've got my settings right. I've got my layer right. And I can kind of click, it's all set up, which is why it's letting me just do it now, into those openings all the way around until I've filled them all. All right, so all of my openings are filled. I can hit escape. I'm done with that hatching. The solid was already done for me. Let's see if it's on our hatching layer. It was on hatching, so she had done that work, and hopefully you have done that work as well. Then there's something else that's going on in here. And it'll make more sense if I show you the 3D and I get you excited about SketchUp. I don't know how many of you have seen the 3D. I might have shown a still before. But what's going on in here is you have columns and you have a low point in the ceiling and a high point that's created by these columns. It's not completely open to the ceiling necessarily in here. So when I look at my PDF, we see it's like this is an opening of some type, which means there's an actual structured boxed opening between those columns, and then maybe some type of drywall or beam that's going all the way fully across above that, and then the ceiling. And it's on both sides, so it's kind of its own enclosed raised space. And the way we're accomplishing that is treating these like openings that are hatched. So we have to complete these lines from the pipe chase to the end wall here on both sides and finish out those hatchings. Let me look at the SketchUp. So this is SketchUp. This is what we were working on downloading this week. And this is the realistic drawing of what happens for those openings. So there's a beam at this height, and then below that is an opening in each of those spaces, but you can see how it continues up where we have those slopes and how we could create another level once we get to that 12 foot down here, and then we have the 8 foot above that creates this kind of open space above our beam, right? So now that you've seen this, it might make more physical sense what's going on. Here's our pipe chase. There's some pipes down here in the wall. Here's this other portion of wall and these two columns, and then we create walls within the space. And never copy this if you're in 108. It is literally the worst space planning ever. Even the kitchen, there's things that like I did in this kitchen that you can't humanly do in the kitchen because of how the ceiling is laid out. I would have to have like special posts for these cabinets. So I'm not an inspiration to you. I'm just trying to give people an idea who aren't in 108 and have no idea about what the space they're working on looks like. The only thing I do like about what I did is my little window seats, because who doesn't love a nice window seat, right? So if I let it load out, here's this lovely reading nook that I have created for my homeowners. So this is what's going on. This is why we can't just leave it open. There's a division in our ceilings that's created by those beams and then the drywall and parts above and below it. All right, so cool. It is so cool. So at this point, when we get into SketchUp, maniacally, I used to make the people create the whole building. All right, so two classes back, I gave them most of the core, but not the center part of it, and no walls and no windows, and they had to draw almost the majority of the building. So now what I do is I usually provide you with an empty SketchUp model link that I've created the SketchUp model. So people in 108, once you learn how to draw walls and everything, you're just adding on. That is out of the kindness of my heart, and that means your models better be pretty exceptional because I've done 30% of the work for you. So this is good to see though. And you can see how the boat pulls in underneath in here, right? There's that space. And then we might have some type of decking that would come out under here. There could be access to a lower level, or we could walk up and around here. We've got our chimney and our windows. And eventually from SketchUp, you can export all of your elevations, which is awesome, in one immediate step. So like today, in 2 seconds, I could export this entire exterior elevation right into CAD. It would be totally wonderful. But we don't have time for that, so you just got a sneak peek. So let's go back to our AutoCAD and look at what we've got. So we said we're completing this. We can change this back to be a wall for now because we're just drawing lines. And I'll just drag from that endpoint to the perpendicular over here. Escape and then enter to get back into my tool. Endpoint to the perpendicular, escape, enter to get back into my line tool. I'm doing the same thing as I'm aligning these corners over here. escape, enter, escape. All right, so now I've created boundaries for hatching, and it's the same hatching that I had here. So if I switch to my hatching layer, and then I click on my hatch, it'll ask me if I want to do the same thing, and I'm totally fine with that because it is the same. And then I can come in there and finish out those other openings by clicking on them and then hitting escape when I finish using my tool. So let's see how far we are now relative to our PDF. We've got all of this done. And then we have our pipe chases, and then it looks like, if I zoom in, I know it's so hard to read, dropped beam at 10'6" above finished floor that's coming between these two things. So I need to close this off, but it's not necessarily hatched. It's just for us to understand there's something there too, a dropped beam. And there's like a little bit of reality to this. Like, this definitely is showing the reality of what's going on. There's still framing because it doesn't continue all the way to the ceiling. This one could be a different type of hatching instead of open like this, but that's how it was drawn in the original book, and that's how we do it. And sometimes that's how we are when we work with architects and contractors. They tell us how they want it, and that's how we do it. So let's just draw these lines. It's easier for us anyway. We love easy. We'll come in here and we will drag a line from there to there, enter, escape, enter, and then drag a line from here to here. And there we have it. We finished that off, minus all of our text. So it wasn't as daunting as maybe it seemed at first because of a lot of copying and quick line work. And hatching really is just a fun wraparound tool that we get to use. And our solid hatching and layers control made this easier. That's why if you hadn't been doing that, it's a very sad day for you because it makes your life really hard as you continue on with things that could have been big time savers. So text. Yay. I've got all of this, all of that hatched in there. Yep, that's it. Well, let's talk about these weird random lines, and then my apologies for your section drawing. So if we come back into here, what Heather was trying to communicate to you was I had said the midpoint was about this whole building, right? So I had this line in here, and then I might draw from that line. It's not even going to know. I'm assuming it's this one. Let me see if I pick on that line again. Yep, okay, a midpoint. So if I drag that midpoint up, it would be different than if I do a midpoint of here and here, most likely. So yeah, see, it's like just off. So the midpoint of the whole building was off to the midpoint, and I think it's even a little more dramatic than this, and I just didn't get the right point, but the midpoint of the overall house on the outside. This is what we're looking at in SketchUp, where our peaks are coming up in there in that central portion. It's where the peak comes up right in here, central to these columns. And not necessarily perfectly central to the overall house, I think makes it more accurate because that's symmetrical about the columns, the point. So that would have changed it, and we would have needed to adjust it and moved it over and snapped it to the new midpoint and then done this work. So it doesn't affect any of this. It doesn't affect the walls, the central supports, or anything. It might affect this hatching in here and the placement of this and the hatch of that. But even when you corrected that, what happened was the PDF for the section drawing, I used to make them draw from literal scratch. So no doors, no windows, no roof. And they had to rotate the angles and find them. And they had to use like special measurements to drop. Well, what I noticed on one of the PDFs, section drawing, is this measurement, and let's see if there's a section with dimensions. Section with dimensions. Notice this 5'3" does not meet with the snap point of the actual roof placement in here. It's lower than it is, so that dimension is off. So there's one, because people are like, why are these off? 8 foot's fine, 12 foot's fine. The midpoint has to be right though still. So we should have both of these, but the midpoint needs to go over for some of you. And then this one, it was like some of you drew, by drawing this right and snapping the roof down further, it corrected some of these measurements for you. Even though this looks like it's off, it made some of these more accurate, but then it made other things off. So I'm not going to be a Nazi about how off this is or this is. I want the midpoint corrected, which means that these overhangs are then closer. It's about like 2.5 foot versus 2.25 feet or something. So right now it's like inches off. I want it to be closer to like half inches. And then snap it in place. And it was because I created just a quick block that was different than the original PDF that you could snap in place. And it had a different angle because I didn't draw it from scratch. So I'm not concerned about grading it that hard. All it changes in 108 is this is your room slants down here, and then this is flat drywall. Okay, so I don't think I have this. I don't think the SketchUp has a roof necessarily. It might show it, but you can see, like, if your roof slants, then it's flat for a portion and then it slants down here. If this is the 8 foot height, it's flat there, and then it'll slant in the teeny tiny corner spots over there. So you'd want to know that for an elevation is what it's most important for. And if it's like, I mean, our precision, we'd hope, would be more accurate once we snap to the middle so they're more equal with each other, but I'm not concerned beyond that. So benevolent. I know, I'm crazy too. I should have checked it before. I'm surprised that it didn't get worse than it really was. So everything for the majority, you all mostly did all of this right. And this, it was just this part which caused number 1, 2, 3 to be really off, and then something in here, and that's okay. So little fix, and no one will ever know the wiser, not your jury. They're not that crazy, and I'm the one who would care. So we have that. So what does that mean? Let's pretend you fix it, right? And we want to draw what we're seeing over here. What those lines on there are telling me is that this midpoint is peaking in here, okay? So that's where it's making that triangular peak in our SketchUp right here, and there'd be ceiling that continues at that angle or slope. And then I can trim that line. So I'm going to choose what to trim from, this interior wall here, enter, and I can cut off this because for me it was just extra that I drew over from here. And then we wanted to find the slope here where it's not 8 foot because the ceiling drops down in the corners below our 8 foot. It makes these little edges that might be funny in a bedroom above the bed, or if we want to hang certain things. So we want to find where that 8 foot meets with the slope and draw our line across, okay? Which signifies where the roof is sloping downwards as opposed to where it's a flat 8 foot. Does that make sense to everybody visually? Is it easier to understand thinking with the section aligning with your reflected ceiling plan?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And hopefully the model has really helped too, like really seeing how it would be three-dimensionally. So once you've reevaluated this, moved it over or whatever, and if you really don't want to, it's so insignificant. I don't think anyone would ever know. You could almost just bounce them out on your reflected ceiling plan for all I care, because I don't have you to mention it. It's more about labeling this week. So if you pull those down, and we want to do it on both sides, so same thing over here. Where does my slope, my flat, meet my slope of my roof? And then I have my green line polar tracking coming over here, and it snaps perpendicular to the wall adjacent. So then I can do my same trim, and I would want to trim everything off from this interior wall. And it looks like this one doesn't connect on hers. It could be different. It could be continued for you or little pieces, so make sure you've got it all, and enter. And then I can just, ooh, it doesn't intersect with my cutting edge. Why not? It does too. Let me do trim, and we're gonna do this piece and this piece, enter, and then we're gonna select those. Okay, so then we have that, and that tells me something about my slopes, these little corners things, and my flat spaces and my slopes, but it doesn't tell me enough. I don't know which is flat and which is sloped unless I looked at this side by side, and they're not on the same sheet. So I want to label them so that somebody else might know without looking at that section drawing. So that's where the PDF is telling us we need to add labels that say slope where it's sloped, slope in here. This is wrong, so I'm going to have to edit that. Let me write myself a note, and then I'll post a new one. Every year it's been wrong for 2 years, and every year people draw it. And then it makes me wonder if they even know what's going on. Do we know why it's wrong? What's wrong about it? What is wrong about that peak symbol? Anybody, anybody? It's pointing the wrong way. This is the peak. This line is the peak right here in the center because it slopes up. So if we were to take a snipping tool, and always think about what you're drawing. If you don't know what you're drawing, then come to me because there's no point in drawing it, right? So if we're in here, this is like if I was to pull this off like this is the elevation of that, right? So if this is the peak, this thing right here is the peak. And that means that really we have a slope, and then here is the peak. The arrow should be going to the center line. That's where it's highest. That is its peak at its center. And then we have slopes on both sides going away from it. So we could have slope here. You could copy this note over twice if you want them to know it's sloped on both sides. It doesn't go slope and then suddenly flat, because it could look like this if we don't put that note, right? It could have a slope with a peak-ish that then flattens out over here a little bit. So as many notes as possible that help to know what you're doing are good, and then really making sure the notes are accurate so that the peak doesn't end up over here, which would look like this instead. Okay, so got to change that for you. This one's right, slope is right. We could live our life happily if we added another one even over here, like I was saying for slope. Slope, so beautiful. All right, so that's what's happening in there. How do we do this? Well, those are those multi-leaders that I was talking about. So let's now move on to creating sheets and then into text, and then we'll come back to our multi-leaders because we've got now all our drawings set up that we can label them. We're just missing some labeling. Okay, so sheets. We have ArcD down here, and she did this well. She had her sheet set up in here. And then it was at, when I double click, a 1/4 inch scale, which is what I wanted it to be at. So yay, Melissa. What are we going to do with these sheets though? It's ArcD and that's not super useful. We saw when we go to print it, it'll label it assignment 5M Weldy ArcD. So AutoCAD is trying to help us out. But it'd be really nice if we could have a couple of these and we can label them individually as what they need to be. So I am going to make some duplicates. I'm going to move or copy, and I'm going to choose ArcD. So let me do it slower. If I right click on ArcD and then I left click move or copy, I make my selection ArcD. I have to checkbox create a copy. If you were to click OK, nothing would happen unless you click this box. And then I click OK. And now I have ArcD, ArcD2. Well, I need, according to my instructions, to create a sheet for every major drawing that I have. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, and then this is something special. So boathouse files, 1, 2, 3, 4 for now. for now. So you can make more because trust me, you're gonna need them. But I have 1 and 2, so any of these are fine. Layouts are layouts. I could click on this and I can move or copy ArcD from layout 1. It doesn't matter where you click, just that you click on a layout tab. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to do move or copy again. ArcD, create a copy. Okay. I've got 3 and then I can do one more. ArcD. Doesn't matter, they're all ArcD. It could be 1, 2, or 3. And okay. So now you're like, where'd that one go? It should be in here. I don't know what happened to it, to be honest with you. It's going to be one of those days for me. Create a copy. Okay. All right, there we go. Now we got 4. Well, now I've created this guy. I can always right click a layout. Like if you have so many of these piling up for some reason, who knows why, right click, delete. Okay. I can do that as many times as I feel so led. Right click, delete. Okay. And that helps clean my work environment. I might keep one layout 1 because it's a different size and you don't want to lose it completely. So keep that guy. Then you have 4 of these. If I double click on this, it makes it editable. All right, so I can have one of these that's labeled reflected ceiling plan. Okay, what else do we got? Floor plan. Double click. Floor plan. A floor plan is different than a furniture plan. Sometimes it's referred to as a core, but it usually just has fixtures and things that can't be moved and does not have furniture on it. All right, what else do we have? Site plan. Site plan. And reflected ceiling plan, floor plan, site plan. What am I missing? Building section. Yep, it gets its own deal. Double click. Building section. You could also do section, drawing. All right, so we've got all our tabs created. Woo, that was a good portion of our homework. That was very manageable. So let's see, we've done this whole portion. Then we've created our reflected ceiling plan, which is going to go on one of those tabs. And that whole portion up here is really under create the layouts, D sizes, floor plan, site plan, section, reflected ceiling plan. Add text to core. And this is the fun part. That's going to make hardly any sense to you, and it's made more sense to me over the years. Heather, I wonder if it'll make more sense to you this year. All right, because you're on your 2nd year of it. I have a special chart for you. I want you to understand the difference between annotative text and non-annotative text. It's really hard to understand, but we're going to do it anyway. So we have a scale factor chart, and the scale factor chart was up here under these documents. Download the documents, the last one. Okay, here we have it. So the chart lists drawing scale factors and AutoCAD text heights for common architectural drafting scales. All text shown is in inches. So for instance, 1/8 equals 1/8 inch, right? All of these right here are in inches. Text height. It'll make more sense when I show you. And then it says to get feet, divide by 12, blah, blah, blah. So over here, we have plot sizes or drawing scales. Like when we looked at Melissa's, and the rest of you, hopefully, 1/8 or 1/4, whichever one you chose, I had asked you to set your scale in your AutoCAD to be those things. So when we're looking at a scale, we mean if I'm going to physically print this or plot it or draft it to a size, when I double click in her window, she's taken the time to adjust her scale to be 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. Could be 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. Any of those things, but most likely it's a quarter. So let's say it's a quarter for all the drawings we're going to put into their windows tonight. All right, so we have that. And 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. All right, so That means 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. We've all taken drafting. We know what that means with our scale. If we print it, we know it's going to be a certain size based off that scaled measurement. So what's happening with our text? Let's go back into our model space. So we have our text. I'm going to click on annotate. And we're mostly working with our multi-line text. Very rarely do we work with single line text. It's difficult to use. So I enjoy using multi-line and avoid it. You have within your file the following settings. You should have notes. It might not be the font that I have it set to now, but you have notes. And I'm going to try again, Heather, this year with City Blueprint, even though it's evil, because it's in here again. So it makes me think it has to be in their version of CAD. So you have notes. It might not look like this, but the label will. Yep.
I think the city blueprint is in yours because you downloaded it. I recently learned how to bring in new files, or
Well,
sort of, kind of learned.
This is Melissa's file.
Well, it might be. Melissa? Did you open that file that I sent? Because if she opened it into
No,
this one, it like
no,
imports that.
so she didn't have it. So that's what I'm going to show them tonight. But it is available in 2017. So if they open their file, they do have notes. And then what I want them to do is, so if you click on notes and you have it as active, and you go to so I want notes over here, and then I want to go manage text styles and see how it's on notes right now. Once I chose See City Blueprint was available, Heather, under here, under the 2017 on the computers. So
Oh,
I chose it, and then I had applied it, and then it became how I wanted it. But it wasn't showing up when I opened it. Does that make sense? Heather, did you fall off the face of the earth?
no, I kind of no. You'll have to say it again. I'm sorry.
All right, so everyone has notes. If you're working along with me right now, this is Melissa's file. She had something labeled notes. It's underneath the text style. It wasn't originally City Blueprint. So with it being active in blue like this, under Manage Text Styles, Notes, under the font name, you just do City Blueprint. You can start typing something. So if I do F, it'll go to F. If I type in C, it'll go to C. If I start typing City Blueprint just on my keyboard, you're not going to see it typing on the screen, City, it'll bring up City Blueprint. And then that will become the style in the corner, and you're going to apply it. Now it's already applied to hers, which is why it's not showing on there as letting me do it. But it is available in
Okay.
2017. So they should be able to do it this semester. I don't know why. It's like it has to do something with like different types of Microsoft, but it doesn't make sense because the software carries the fonts, not Microsoft. You know what I mean? So
I'm gonna look at mine and see if it's there.
do look because I love it and it's my favorite. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to change we're going to go to our notes. Under our annotate, its multi-line text should be active. We're going to make sure notes is selected. We're going to make sure our manage text styles has that as active in blue. We're going to type City Blueprint. It'll show up. After it shows up, we select it and hit apply, and then close out of this, and we've changed the text as much as I want to. But what you can see under there without changing anything is, one, you have a lot of styles already. Should you use them? Not necessarily, because you have no idea what you're doing. Two, manage text styles. We can change a lot of things. So we can change the font name. We can change it, the style. Sometimes some have the ability to be bold and italicized. It says like big versions or regular versions. Some are just one little choice. We could change our height here. That's dangerous. Our width factor in here. Effects, you for some reason want it to be upside down and backwards because you're really like trying to Da Vinci on us that you don't want anyone to read it except in a mirror. You could do that, but we're not going to do it for my class. So this is the important thing, which I'm going to explain later. So this one is not annotative. It's just normal. What does normal even mean? We don't know yet. So you can change font styles. It's just like working in Microsoft Word. pick a style and kind of adjust it, right? And then apply it and we're done. And then we can set it to be current. So my note style is not current there. I double clicked it, set current, and I'm going to close it. So if I went into the instructions now, oh boy, and I go back, I have no idea why I'm laughing. It's like an anxious, trying to explain text laugh. All right, way down here. Use the scale factor chart, 1/4 inch equals a foot drawing scale. Of height is the plotted height. You must do floor plan text using that sheet. For all their plans, you can use the heights given and convert to the correct inches, measurements, and model space. Make sure all fonts are City Blueprint before beginning and rename the standard text to be notes. Okay, so yours is already notes, and we're just going to change it to be City Blueprint. And then, for instance, on the floor plan, it says the words pipe chase are 1/8 inch height multi-line text notes. And I'm going to edit this because what I was saying in the instructions for the floor plan, I want you to do them annotative using the scale factor. You must do this using the scale factor and annotative notes. All right, it'll all make sense, I promise. And then add text. We'll make it even clearer. Okay, so I'll save it. So pipe chase is 1/8 inch height multi-line text notes, but it's annotative notes for all of these. So if I look at my PDF, which again, you're downloading all of these files, and the floor plan is the one that you use as the basis for your text and how it should end up looking. All right, so here it is. So it's saying at the center there, pipe chase. This is 1/8 inch, and we're using annotative notes. So we have to create an annotative notes because right now we only have a notes. Yep, bye, Karen. All right, so if we come into here, how do we create an annotative notes? Okay, so I have this active, manage my text style. I want to create a new one, and we're going to call it annotative notes, just like your instructions. And then we're going to click OK. And I'm just going to double click it so it's blue because it makes me happy. And then City Blueprint is right because it was kind of starting with notes. Whatever you have active over here, it'll kind of duplicate it and then you modify it. So annotative notes is active, City Blueprint is correct, but I want the size to be annotative. And then I'm going to click apply. And then I'm going to close. Annotative notes is active. It's no longer notes. It has the cute little thingy up here, right? So notice, cute little thingy, annotative, is symbolizing scale. It says add scale to annotative objects when annotative scale changes. So we want that text to signify height more so in layout space, these guys, than height in model space, which would be inches versus 1/8 of an inch printed size. So for what we're going to do, our instructions say, well, those are my history notes. We have it actively use annotative notes. Yes. We're going to type the words pipe chase inside the pipe chase. We want 1/8 inch height, multi-line text, notes, annotative, as it says up here. So if I come in here and I try to write by clicking on this symbol, which activates my text tool, I can kind of zoom in here and make a text box. And notice it's at 1/8 inch here, okay? So because it's annotative and 1/8 inch, let's see what happens. Pipe chase. All right, and then I can click off of it to finish the command. All right, so notice that's pipe chase annotative at 1/8 inch. Okay, yay. Now what would happen if I were to not use annotative text? So what if I change my style to just be notes? And now notes is active, and I go to draw my multi-line text. Notice it doesn't say 1/8. Notice it says 6 inches, okay? And I'm going to type pipe chase. Those look very similar to me. One would even say identical. So how are they identical when one says 6 inches and one says 1/8 inches? Well, let's do some measuring, shall we? What if I measure about to the height of my P? The P is the uppercase. The uppercase for a font is what is controlling the font's height when you see 6 inches in that corner. So it says, yes, your P happens to be about 6 inches high in your model space. So that's just 6 inches when we're at 1:1, right? We said in the real world, like if this was printed off, everything in here is 1:1. So if I measured that P and I printed it off in real life, it'd be 6 inches long. It'd be about the width of my hand from the top of my middle finger to the bottom of my palm. So it would be big, and that's why it's 6 inches in here. This guy says he's 1/8 of an inch. Where is he 1/8 of an inch? Because if I measure him in here, he too is 6 inches, okay? Well, let's go to a layout, and we're working on our really, I want this on my floor plan. I don't think I need it over here. So move him. But he's just kind of a experiment in font so you understand what you're doing. Get on that floor plan. Okay. So if I go to my floor plan tab, and it looks like, we're lucky because we already have it pretty much where it needs to be. We have to pull this over. So I double clicked in my window. That makes it active, which means I can pan and scroll. I'm going to pull this over until I have my floor plan in view. Because I didn't zoom in or out, right now it's at 1/4 of an inch. Remember, if you zoom in and out, you have changed your scale. You're going to have to adjust it by clicking on it and then go into 1/4 of an inch. Then you can pan, but you cannot scroll in and out. Otherwise, it'll adjust it again in the corner, right? So let's double click in here. The mysteries of paper space. So this piece of paper is, whatever it is, 24 by 32 or so on and so forth, D size. And when we use our architectural scale, we measure letter height in like 1/8 inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, right? So if I were to print this off, my font size in paper space is 1/8 inch. 1/8 inch printed at D size. Does that make sense to everybody and is crystal clear? Because if it doesn't, you're right where I was for the last 5 years of my life until really like 2-ish and still kind of learning. But it's just saying a printed 1/8 inch on a D size sheet where we're measuring only in inches is an 1/8 inch height with the scale for your text. And when you're in model
Allison,
space, yep.
is that the same as you mentioned the dotted line doesn't show up in the model space, but it shows up in the architectural? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like the scales change because
Right. And you were saying we may not notice it, and then when it's in the, I forget what you call do you call it the
plotting.
line space?
But
Plot?
yeah,
Is
so
that the same
layout.
thing?
These are layouts
It's
down here, or I call it paper space. Either of those, layout
paper
or paper
space
space. Yep.
that it looks, yeah, it
Yeah,
makes it larger, the small.
exactly, because those dashes are based off of inch measurements, like that scale, that physical draftsman scale that you have, where they're measuring it according to 1/8 of everything relative to a 12-inch scale, right? So an 1/8 inch on here is what the height is of our text. Whereas when we're 1-to-1 in model space, this is 6 physical inches compared to a wall that's 54 physical feet, because it's real human life size measurements. So that's the difference. But it's easy enough to just memorize it without really understanding it for now. Okay. And I had to do that for many, many years. So when we come in here, we could either do either of these things, right? And you don't even really have to understand it at the end of the day, right? I'm just confusing you because I can and I have to teach you. It's actually in your syllabus for every school that I teach you how to make fonts and how to understand scale types. And there's certain things I have to say. So this could just pretend it's nothing, right? And we could copy this nothing. And then we're just like, you know what? Who cares if you're 6 inches or what you are? Sometimes I like you to be big, and sometimes I like you to be small. And I can use my scale tool. And it's really great that when I double click on you, I can then see, oh, that's 9/16, and that probably means something, but it doesn't affect how it prints, and it only will affect it sometimes in certain annotative situations. It might disappear. So we mostly want to use notes or non-annotative objects because they can be stretched and shrunk as much as you want without them disappearing in your paper space. Let's see what I mean by that. All right, so this one, I believe he was annotative, and he's annotative notes. So this one, was he just normal or was he special? So let's add one line into this. I'm going to go into annotate, and I just have plain notes, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say pipe chase. We'll see if it works. Last year it was like inconsistent. And then I'm going to go into my floor plan, and I'm going to do a silly thing where I double click and I start to zoom in and out. Oh, good. I've gotten better at annotative text. Okay. So because I clicked annotative and I set it to be annotative and then drew it at 1/8 inch height, it's not disappearing. But if you ever see it disappear, this would be the one to go, the one that's annotative. So let me see if in model, I just want to make sure I have annotative notes. Notes, annotative notes. It's active. I'm going to draw it right here. I'm going to do pipe chase because I swore that bottom one was. Okay, there it is. And then I go into floor plan. Okay, so this is probably a 2017 CAD thing. It understands it's not going to disappear, but that's the difference. One, you're thinking of it, how big is it in paper space? And two, the just plain notes, how big is it in model space? They're the same thing. They have different measurements, and this little PDF tells you. So for instance, at 1/4 inch, we saw when we zoomed our building in, if our height, plotted height, is 1/8 inch, so that annotative height is set to 1/8 inch annotative, then it's going to be the same as 6 inches in model space. Okay, like dragging the good old drag the column and row across. So my annotative 1/4 inch 1/8, like the annotative notes, is the same as 6 inches normal notes. Does that make sense? Because you will have to use this chart. It doesn't have to make sense why the chart is what it is. It just has to make sense how you locate yourself on the chart. Let's do another example from the homework, okay? So if I go back to my
I
homework.
have a question.
Yeah. Who is it? Jordan.
Jordan.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so I've been trying to like type things out and they keep going to like defaulting to like the 4 feet and whatever odd inches. I can't find anywhere that says 1/8 of an inch anywhere.
Are for
I don't know
annotative
what
or
I've done wrong
non-annotative, Jordan?
on both of them.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at your screen. Can you share your screen? Or are you
I'm
set
on a
up?
different computer.
So
Yeah.
I can do it and see.
I mean, if you do, I can do like a webcam if you want.
Do you see,
I
is it
can
in the
mirror
same
that.
spot on here, Jordan? Like in the upper left? Is that where your text is?
Yes.
And so then were you able to locate notes to begin with, like some type of notes text?
Yeah, I was able to do that. And the annotative notes, I was able to create that one.
But this does not let you choose it or change it. What happens is you have to be escaped off of the text in order to, like, if you start typing, then you can adjust it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let me try that.
But before you type, you cannot adjust it. And then once you have typed a certain measurement, it'll be in that drop list as like it remembers the last couple few. But you want to be typing to be able to change and adjust the size.
Okay, yeah, there's not even an 1/8 inch option. I have
So-
4 feet, 202 feet,
So
6 inches.
when you're like this, there might not be an option. But when you click on the multi-text tool and then you draw your text box.
Oh no, you froze.
All right, let me know when it unfreezes. Can you see my mouse? I can hear you, but you're breaking up. I don't know if I'm breaking up too. Am I breaking up?
Can't
People
hear
in
you
over
anymore.
there?
I
No?
can hear you.
Okay, Heather says I'm okay, and so do the other people. So other.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay. All right, so if you click on this letter, right, it starts your text tool.
Yes.
Then you create your selection box, and you have to finish the selection box. Then right here, you just click in there. You don't use the drop down. You click in it, and then you backspace it, and then you type what you want.
Okay. Yeah.
So it won't be one unless you
Hold on, Joanne. I can't. You are breaking up too. I don't know if when you guys.
Oh.
Let me ask your friends. Can you hear them clearly, or are they breaking up? They are breaking up. Okay.
Okay, so I was able to do that, except it's like itty bitty tiny. I can't even read it when I'm zoomed out.
Annotative or normal?
It's the annotative one.
What size? At an 1/8?
At an 1/8, yeah.
That weird, Jordan.
I
So
know.
let's just keep on going with the idea so we get the video done, okay? And then we'll come back to it though, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Sounds
and then
good.
Joanne, can you try and say whatever you were saying again?
Yeah, I'm having the same problem as Jordan. Same.
It's teeny tiny when you go to type it in.
Well, if I go to try to change the size from 6, it's I guess that's the default. With annotative, I typed in 1/8 of an inch, but it goes back to 6 when I start typing.
So if I do this.
That's actually pretty normal, and it's annoying. So here's the thing, like you can either type out what you want to type and then highlight everything you typed and then change it to the one that you told it to be, or you can go and change your text style like as a permanent thing where everything gets written like that.
Okay.
Can I share your screen then, Joanne, so I can see what you're doing? Since Jordan.
Allison,
Yes.
this is Cindy. in past homework on the room labels, I had to do what Heather was saying. I had to highlight
The text.
every label and go up and change each one individually.
So you're saying like if you started your text like this and you said blah, 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 you had to go back and highlight this and then go up and change it?
Yes, or it wouldn't change.
Okay, so let's see if that's the problem. But it sounds like what Jordan's problem is it is reading 1/8, but when it's 1/8, it's teeny tiny. Yes, Jordan?
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, it's teeny tiny
Okay.
when
So
I type.
I know mine is I know mine is right. Well, yay for me, right? But I don't know exactly why. So we're gonna hold that to the end. Heather's point is valid. So you saw if this had been really like weird or it defaulted to something different. Now this is annotative and it goes to 6. So let's see. Is this my notes though? No, this is notes. So I want that to be 6, even though it's like that. And it's not annotative because this isn't blue. See, that means annotative and this means not. So it is 6 inches and that's okay. But if I wanted it to be 8 inches, then I could escape, cancel. So double click it, and they were saying highlight over it and then come up here and say 8 inches if it kept changing. And then if you're like, no, I want it to be 6, and it had somehow automatically changed it for you, then put 6 and change it manually if it ever changes on you. All right. And Laurel says hers is doing the same. So I guess I need to share the screen of one of you people that it's happening to. So Laurel, can I share your screen? Some of you are on 2 different computers is the thing.
Yeah, I'm on 2 different computers.
All right, so what about, who was my other person that was doing it? Joanne, were you my other person?
Yep. Yep. And it just worked. I did what you told me to do. I typed it and then highlighted it and changed it to 1/8 and it worked.
Okay, all right.
So
So,
the annoying thing about that is you're gonna have to do it every time you type unless you change your text style if you want it to be the same every time.
so mine, I get what you're saying. So, are we talking about annotative right now, right? So I'll go to the annotative
Yeah.
style. And then if we go into text, and I had, well, no, not for this one actually, because I created a new one. But if I go under here to my manage my styles, then is this where you were saying, Heather?
Yes.
And then, but you
Go
don't,
ahead.
go ahead. Where are you thinking you want me to go? Because earlier in CAD, it allowed me to prompt what I wanted it to be at a 1/4 inch. So I think it might have done it automatically and it's like held in my computer. You know what I mean? When you
Yeah.
first create an annotative text, it says, do you want, what size are you going to have this font show up at? And then you choose like, you choose the paper size setting. But
Yeah, it's just I'm opening mine because I'm really bad at giving directions verbally, but I've got motor memory, so I can do it. So just give me a minute to get it back up, and then I can tell you what I'm talking about. Sorry, it's almost here.
paper text height.
Okay, so
Is
if
that
I
what
go
changing this to 1/8 in here? No.
no, like cancel out of that and go to the home,
Okay.
and then go to, let me do it on mine. Hold on. Home annotation. There's a drop down. Do you have that on yours?
Under annotate or home?
It's home, and then why don't you have it on yours?
I don't know. Does other
Where's
people?
your text thing?
That's
Yours looks different than mine.
I have the only place I have text is under annotate in this ribbon.
That's different than mine.
Does everybody else have it under home? Do you have an annotation tab?
Yeah, I have an annotation tab on home.
I don't know.
Me too.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know why. Let's see. Well, let's share. Can I share your screen, Heather?
Sure.
Hold on. I gotta change it to you.
All right. Let me find something to focus on.
I think it used to be that way in like the old CAD on mine. Like I've always had it near in here somewhere. Like
You
that.
might have like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
adjusted your toolbar.
Huh. Let me.
So if everybody else has a screen like mine, you can go to Home, and then Annotation has text dimension, all that. So it's got a drop down here, and then you can go. This is for text. This is for dimension text leaders. I don't know that one. I don't use it. I click on that one. I've got my styles, but I can say Manage Text Styles, and then I can set it from here. So if I want it to show up annotated from now on, I can choose City Blueprint, even though I can't read it. Oops, hold on. Let's see. And then what were you saying over here? So this is like the screen that you had up.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, okay.
So, but where do you want? And they already did that.
Oh, it might be set current,
Yeah, they did that.
and then it's still not working.
Yeah, because I had them check the box and then set current. And set current just means that it's the one that's active in the menu actually. So I don't know why it's finicky like that for some and not for others, to be honest with you all. All right, so
Okay.
let's just try another example for a minute, okay? So if we go back out here, so we've done pipe chases 1/8 annotative. Low, once you get that one down, you've got a lot of these covered. Like, so it's set, so you can just use it. So low brick is that way, but it's a multi-leader, so that's special. And then the height for DN is that way, and that's multi-line text notes. So that's just the one we just did, the multi-line notes. So where is DN at? It's probably on the stairs somewhere. Let's look at our PDFs. If I come over here, here's the letters DN. And that's because I draw a multi-leader. I need the letters above, so I just rotated this DN font.
Hey, Allison,
Yes.
are you trying to show your screen?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Boom. All right. So it says under here, DN, assignment 7, and this is still annotative notes. So it's 1/8 inch. And then on our PDF, it's at the stairs over here. And ignore the arrow. The arrow is just an arrow. So it has nothing to do with the font. So we just want our text rotated right about there. So then in AutoCAD, if I come in here, it's kind of right in here. And I go up to my multi-line text and make sure it's on annotative dash notes. And then I can start drawing it. It should say 1/8 here. And I'll start with it like this. And I'll say DN. Then I'll click off. And then I can grab my text and I can go home and I can rotate it. Okay? Because it's going this way with that arrow. And I can move it over and eventually there'll be an arrow somewhere in there. But hopefully with the selecting, the highlighting of your font, so if it hadn't worked and this said like 6 or 5 or whatever, you could select it and then up here when it's selected, you could do 1/4 inch. You could do whatever you need to, but it's really 1/8 inch. But Jordan, when you type 1/8 inch, after all those things considered, it's still tiny at 1/8 inch with it being annotative notes. And the box was checked for annotative.
Hold on, okay, so I typed it and no, it's readable now. I got it to work. But like if I click out of it, like back into like annotate, it says annotative notes and then the other line and then the bottom line it says 6 inches.
So it is
Like
annotative notes and then this says 6 inches here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it goes back, but you'll just set it every time by selecting it like Heather suggested. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So if we do something not 6 inches and not 1/8 inch, okay, then what we want to do is let's go down to reflected ceiling plan. It says that we're going to do our big letters reflected ceiling plan equals 1/2 inch height multi-line text notes. So what we could do is we could look at our PDF and say, well, we could do that annotative notes at 1/2 inch for a 1/4 inch. So if I come over from a 1/4 here in this row over to where it says a 1/2 over here, this is where they meet up because this is a 1/2 plotted height. And that's what's measurement is. It just said in my instruction there. I could either do that annotated text at a 1/2 inch and set it to 1/2 inch, or I could just do notes at 24 inches because you don't have to use the 1/2 inch like you did for the floor plan. So if I go into my AutoCAD, and here's my reflected ceiling plan, and my PDF for my reflected ceiling plan is right there. And let me get out because we want this big font down here. So if I want a big font, I could do 24 just basic notes. So I'm going to come up to my multi-line text. I'm going to make sure this is just notes, which is city blueprint, but it's notes. And I'm going to start my text tool. So I click on my A. I saw it was kind of like a route in here and I need a box. And right now it's 6 inches, but according to my chart, I want 24 inches. Enter, so it starts typing at 24. And so then I can type in reflected ceiling plan. And click off. And then it becomes the exact size I want. Now you also saw it was underlined, and remember all our tools are in here, so if I want the underline, I just double click and I can bold it, I can underline it, but I just want it to be underlined and basically aligned with this corner. You can do it visually, or if you're really bad at that, you could draw a line down from the house, but we want it about in the realm of this far according to the PDF as it's asked for it. So kind of right in down here. And that was 24 in our model space, but if I was in my reflected ceiling plan in here and I measure it from the height of the uppercase, it's 1/2 inch. All right. I know it's weird, but it's 1/2 inch printed at a 1/4 size sheet. So when you get done with these sheets, we should not see any extra stuff. We can pull the nodes of our box to do that. Remember, I'm not panning, I'm not zooming because that changes it. So I always have to reset that if it's not 1/4. I want to make sure it's pretty much centered and all the extra junk is out of it except for the text notes and the actual plan. And then I'm done with that sheet once I add all the other notes to it. So we're slowly but surely centering our plans where we want them to be, making sure they're at a 1/4 inch with our scale tool in the right-hand corner. Coming in and limiting what we're seeing so it's not a bunch of extra junk. Adding our notes, using that chart and using either notes or annotative notes. And I'm fine with you using either of them. They're pretty much the same thing. It just depends on which one you use. If you're going to type like a fraction of some type of inch measurement, or if you're just going to type a full inch measurement. So a fraction like 1/8 versus 6 inches. Let me try another one. So if we come in here, we've had a 1/2 a height. Multi-liter is its own special deal. We have our 1/8 inch, and our 1/8 inch is in this one on a chart was equivalent to, I think, 6 inches, right? A 1/2 inch was equivalent to 24 inches. And we saw that by looking at the chart, and we said at a 1/2 inch, at a 1/4 inch scale, it would be 24. At 1/8 inch at a 1/4 inch scale, it'd be 6 inches. And these are our notes normal, and these are our annotative notes. All right, so we're starting to hopefully understand it a little bit more. Let's see if there's anything else besides those two real measurements, and there might not be. So it's mostly 1/2 and 1/8, 1/2 for all of the headers. And then we've got our 1/4 inch for our multi-liter. So let me look at the multi-liter label. What is a 1/4 inch? Is 12. The only thing I don't remember is if we created our own multi-leader from the book last year, Heather. So I'm going to see if I have one in here that they could use that's going to work, or if we have to scratch it from a beginning.
I think we just added leaders to it.
So let's see. If I go back into my annotate or your text tool where Heather was, they're the same thing. See, here's dimensions, multi-line text, single line text. It just looks a little bit different. Then when I'm in here, we want to find our multi-leader. Here's my multi-leader here. Without setting anything, it's set to standard. It doesn't look like I have anything besides standard. So that's the question. Did we have to do a lot of change to this multi-leader? Let's see something that needs a multi-leader. How about our floor plan again? So control minus, there's just an arrow. We can talk about how that works out. But over here we have low brick wall. So if our low brick wall, according to our homework, is 1/8 inch multi-leader label, let's see if that'll work out with the standard one that we have. So I clicked multi-leader and I'm going to click kind of here, and the first click is where the arrow is coming off of. So see the little arrow tip? That's what it's drawing. The second click is where the bend is that leads off to the text, and then we get to type our text. So right now it says it's at 12 inches, and we were saying it was 1/4 of an inch annotative, but it's not annotative. So in that case, if we look at our chart, it was 12. So that should be right, actually. But the only thing is it doesn't have the right font. So that might be the one thing we have to edit. So let's just look at the size of this brick wall. Typed. Whoa, it's so big. It might have to be an internal thing. And let's see if it's doing what it's doing to you guys. 12 foot. Well, that's why. Is it? So 12 inches. We don't want it to be that big. All right, so it's still a little big. I don't want it to be this big either. And I'll double check that I made it right. 1 foot. All right, and I'll see. I might have to change, and the font style will change it quite a bit too. So I'm going to go into my leaders and to edit it. And then let's do a new one just because we'll leave the standard one so we're not messing with what's in the system. And we'll call it multi-lead is fine. And we'll continue. So I'm fine with the size of the arrow actually. And the color, so these are just things you could change. You could do spline, none. So that's like, what is the leader line going to end up looking like? Or straight. Straight is fine for what we're doing. We saw we got the nice click and it goes up. Line type could be dashed or continuous, so it doesn't have to be a solid line that leads to the arrow. Line weight could be thicker. And then we have close filled symbol. It could be a little dot. It could be any number of these things, but I'm happy with my closed fill arrow. And the size looked pretty good. And the break size was 1/8. Leader structure, maximum leader points. This stuff we almost never mess with. This stuff, this guy, yay, specifies the scale for the multi-leader. So this is where, let's see if we have to make it annotative or not, and then it'll fix my problem, right? And then leader format, content. The text, let's change our text to be city blueprint. So it's textile, drop down arrow, type city blueprint. Does it have it in here? It doesn't. Oh, it'll let us use our notes though. So we can just make the text style the same as notes, which is city blueprint. Does that make sense? It's picking from our text styles. So now we have city blueprint, and I'm not going to change anything else in here. So all I've changed was city blueprint by changing this to notes under the text style that we set up earlier. The leader format, we didn't change anything. And the leader structure, we clicked annotative. So I'm going to try it and click OK and close. And I'll set it current, close. All right. So if I go back here and multi-leader is active, and I try the same thing, but I'm going to try it from this point, and I click, and it said 1/4 of an inch, and then I type low. Ooh, it might not work out. I might have to put it off and do it the book's way then. So this might be what was happening to everyone. But it said 6 then, and then it says 1/4. So this was the one I was afraid of to make. 1/4 of an inch, annotative scale, add 1/4 of an inch. What if I do 12 inches? Then is it as big as the one below? No, then it's about the size that I want it to be. All right, so let's hang off on the multi-leader. So this week, what we'll do is I'll go through and I'll highlight all the things that are just purely text. So that's like this guy, and then this one, the majority of them are. There's very few things with arrows. And then I think I'm going to have you create the multi-leader that's in the book, and we'll walk through that another time. Let me see how much I have left. I might be able to do it tonight. So we're just adding the text, and we created our ceiling plan, and I think that would catch us up. And I've got quite a bit of time to kind of puzzle through it. So we might start these things up here and see if this helps create a multi-leader that we can use on 455 to 458. Like I was saying though, I want you to understand it. So I've as clearly as I can, explained how we do this text in standardized text, how it's annotative and non-annotative. For the multi-leader, I don't know. It's not that big. I don't think that's right with the PDF. If I look at it over here, low brick wall, it seems smaller to me, unless it's just like a misprint. So I'm going to pause my recording so I'm not rambling the whole time. The video. So after lots of logical deduction, looking at text sizes, and with all of our standard text working out, it must have been a typo for the size that I'm looking at on the PDF, that I'm just choosing a bigger one than what I'm wanting. This is equal in size to this here, so I'll go through and change that so that it doesn't say 1/4. Instead, it just says the 1/8 inch, so that you could either do it as 6 inches or 1/8 inch, and it should work out. If you do a standard one then, so using a standard multi-leader under annotate, and we go into our multi-leader tool, and standard should be part of the program, so it would already exist, and we just select on our standard, and within that, I do want it to be the same kind of font, so I don't think that should change anything much. We'll see if that changes the size. So if I modify it and I go to content and text style, and I choose my notes and OK, we'll see, and then set current and close. And then I were to start my tool by clicking multi-leader and coming into here and dragging up. And in here, I type in my 6 inches, and I type low brick wall. Then it's going to work out for us. So all I'm going to change on here is whenever you saw a 1/4 of an inch, so like these were all fine. Those are what I want them to be. This one, where we're using our multi-leader, needs to be 1/8 of an inch, so that it's going to be the height I want it to be at on the PDF. So I'll say 1/8 multi-leader, and then the reflected ceiling plan is a different thing. It's at 1 height multi-line, And then this is right, this is right, this is right. And then 1/8. Yeah, 1/8. So see, I must have just read that one wrong. So that one was right, and it was just my bad. So everything should work out now that I've changed them. All text except plan name. And here I said 1/8 multi-liter label. Okay. All right. So that makes me wonder if it was just the wrong plan, because here it was 1/8. I'm sorry I'm so weird tonight. I don't know. It's probably just pregnancy brain. You can only claim that so many times in your pregnancy, though. So if this is 1/8, that was okay. But on my reflected ceiling plan, does it really need to be a quarter? Let's look and see. So the words for reflected ceiling plan, my gosh, all text except the name that had said 1/4. So if I pull up that PDF, let's see, like, dropped down under beam. So it was right, and I just made you guys sad and sorrowful for so long because I confused you. So everything was okay. I had just misread the first one and confused them. So that's okay too, because it is a bigger font than 1/8 inch. So if I want to do just a arrow, so here's an arrow with text, and we can use our multi-liter tool, and you can go either way. So if I click here is my start of my arrow, and then I go that way, it goes that way. If I hit escape, so what I just did there was escape, I get just an arrow that I can kind of play with. And if something ever didn't work out, okay, this is how you learn to use your tools smart. There's only so many options for the text part. So like when you initially start a multi-liter, notice it had a setting for like how far away from the line you want it. And it's always going to be this close. It's not going to come above it or below it or in the middle of it unless you set that every time differently. So instead of doing that, we can hit escape when we create our arrow, and then we have a fluid arrow that we can bend how we want to, right? Like this if I wanted to. I could even straighten it out. If you ever see a straight arrow in your homework, I can straighten it out like this. And I can move it just like any other object. So I'm using the move tool. And so for instance, this down arrow I said would come into play. I can rotate it like an object. So I'm pulling up to rotate down. And now I have a down arrow with text above it. Notice you can always do any combination of a leader line that has text with it attached to the leader, or if it's not working out, you can create a fluid arrow and add your own text using your text tool instead. So that's how some of these things will have to be. There's certain things where you can, for the amount of space given, the arrow will disappear or something funny will happen unless you create your own text like I did over here with the down and then a separate arrow. Sometimes we just play with it till it works. So for instance, let's look at our reflected ceiling plan PDF. The slope has 2 arrows. So what I could do is I could go into my annotate and I could do a multi-liter, and we'll see if it'll work out the way it's supposed to work out. So if I have this and I straighten it out, and it said all text was at 1/4 of an inch. So that was, what did it say, 12 inches. And I say slope, and then I finish it out. Let's go home and move this. So I want this arrow to be straight on this side. Now, someone might think we add a leader line to it. So if we were in here, you can add a leader and it goes the other way, and that works for this one. So good. I never know which one. So that's how I could create that. I did a leader line. I did my text. I just remember from the homework that it had said for everything on our reflected ceiling plan, it's going to be at that 1/4 of an inch. And I, from my chart, knew that 1/4 of an inch is equal to 12. So this comes over here and this comes down, and that's 12 or 1/4 of an inch, depends on which one you're going to use. So in my AutoCAD, I just did my font size for the slope in there. And then I clicked on annotate and add leader. If I didn't want the leader, I could click remove leader, and I could pick either side, I'm pretty sure, and then hit enter, and it'll remove that side. And then I could add a leader and click here, and then go to the side I want to by pulling out and add a leader. I could continue adding many, many, many leaders, but that's crazy, so we're not going to do any of that. So leaders are just like fluid objects. This one, that's the easiest way. Add a leader with the text at the correct height, and then add an extra leader. Let's see if there's a weird one. I know every year it stumps people, but I've given you more information by telling you can do combinations of things. So if I come in here, this dropped beam under at 10'6" AFF, which means above finished floor. So dropped beam under at 10'6" above finished floor. We want to do our multi-leader standard, and all text is at that 12-inch height. So I said it's kind of, let's look at the PDF one more time. The arrow's coming down on that side. So it's somewhere in here, and that's the arrow, and then a line, and then it's coming down. Oh, this always stumps people. All right, so they're like, the arrow's on the other side. How did you do that? So we'll just say dropped beam at 10'6" AFF. And I know there's more to it, but I just want to show you the directional thing. And this is 12 inches. Undo. I deleted you. Sorry, rushing. Say. Okay. Okay. Okay, so there we have it. It's the same size as our slope. We got our magical test. It's a little bit bigger than the other ones, but the arrow is on this side. If you pull your arrow over to the other side, it just works that way. I grabbed this node here, and I crossed the symmetrical axis in here, and that pulled my arrow how it needed to be. I could also, and yeah, the other thing would be messy. It'd be like removing, I bet we could remove a leader, add a leader. So if I added a leader on the other side, and then I removed the leader I didn't want, it should work the same kind of way. Yep. So pulling it across that axis or adding a leader where you really want it and deleting the other side would be fine. Okay, so all we're doing is creating those, and then every plan needs to go on its correct plan. Now the section drawing is a little bit different. Ooh, this is one more little thing. So we're going to come over to our section. We're going to make it 1/4 of an inch. Okay. We're going to, I think this is the way I want to do this. Make it so I can only see that. Then we're going to go home, and we are going to rotate that box. Yes, Heather, does that sound like a good idea or a bad idea? What do you think? And then move it. What?
I don't know. I guess it works.
Yeah, it does work. But you have to have your text and everything. You have to have all your text and everything done. So eventually, I think you're going to have to move him over anyway to have room for the text that says section underneath it. And then you'll have section underneath it, and then you can do the step that I just did in here. But let's see, did it go away? Oh my gosh, sad day. I don't know why it did that. So let's see if it keeps doing that. And if not, then I'll rotate the model and do all this fancy stuff. Model, building section, site plan, building section. Okay, so there it is. It seems to be okay, but model, it's normal. Good. We don't want it to be weird in our model. You could also rotate it in your model. Did you rotate it in your model eventually, Heather?
I probably did.
So you could do this. because you've already drawn it off your floor plan, and you know, I just like to have them to see how I did it, so I remember to other things. You could have done it like that, which then it's like, what in the world is going on now? Your box would have been normal because you would have never rotated it, right? So your box.
I'm assuming that I probably made a copy of the floor plan I copied it from and rotated the copy and that. It just seems like something I would do.
That seems like a lot of copies.
I
I
had a ton
wonder.
of copies.
I wondered too. This was my other thing. Okay, so there's that. We could have done that. Then 10,000 clicks back. Let's see what happens if we do this. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to do viewport. My other class starts soon. Viewports, a single, and this is a reminder because you're going to have to create some probably because you're making new sheets unless you copy it with a viewport. So then I'm going to go in here, zoom, and in here, I'm going to rotate it because my mind tells me it might not affect it. Let's see. And then scroll in. It might. Now, if it does, then we're never going to do this again. Quarter. Aha, that's the right way to do it. Just like that. So we created our viewport, and then in here, we rotated it so it's oriented the way the section should be once it's upright, but it doesn't, once we double click out of here, affect our model space. Our model space is oriented about itself. So that saves you rotating any boxes. Just have your normal viewport, zoom in, and then rotate using your northeast, southwest in your building section within your model space, in your paper space. So this guy right here, all I did was rotate him like this. Then I zoomed in as close as I could, and then I changed it to a quarter, made sure he was more centered, double clicked out, and now everything's okay. And that's the best way to do it. All right, so that's your homework. In Professor King's class, you're doing kitchen elevations. So not people who are only in 115, you can just ignore that. But because you're doing that, I had sent her these lovely packets from when I taught the class, and these are the ones that have, I should really open them so I don't have 100 copies. They have the standards for drawing elevations with the symbols on them, with the correct dimensioning, a really nice clean one from the NKBA, a couple examples from different walls and perspectives. And then the drawing standards I gave out to all my students that cover everything in very much detail, mechanical plan, all the plans you need to enter the NKBA floor plan, construction plan, mechanical plan, how to do center lining for all of your lights, and a ton of covering on how to dimension all the different views, additional ones, countertop plan, soffit plan, what type of lines mean what, and how to recognize them on a plan, how to understand your lines in your dimensioning. Also, why are kitchen and bath plans different? And then this shows you like the cutout of a floor plan in height versus a normal house floor plan cut, because they're usually a little bit different. Other identifying lines, how to signify different types of walls with different types of hatching, right? That's positive. If it's for demo or if it's existing, if openings are being closed. Door symbols, so open, cased, sliding, what they look like in elevation. This should be helpful to you. I've also emailed it to her, so you'll probably get it twice from me if you want to download it here tonight, and from her later on, unless she already put it in this after I gave it to her today. So much. Cut lines, curved staircases, appliance symbols, so on and so forth. Tile, how to do cut tiles so you don't have to draw it everywhere, all those kind of things. Lettering. I hope that's useful to you. I think I did get to cover everything, even though it was a mess. Sorry.
Allison,
Mm-hmm.
sorry to interrupt. I could ask Cheryl this, but for our elevations, like we're supposed to do, kitchen elevations, do I I mean, let's say on my cupboards, I'm going to do French country and it'll have, some, what do I want to say, moldings
Yep.
and line work and stuff. Do I draw that by hand? Or do you have do I find blocks that are like that or?
I bet you could find blocks, but you can draw it in AutoCAD too. And then the thing about it is AutoCAD is about working smarter, not harder, right? So if you had like a door like this, and then you had like a 15, a 12, and a 30 or something, and they all have the same molding but at different sizes, you'd create one of the sizes and you could stretch it, right? Or you could mirror it and copy it and like just paste it a couple of times. So once you create the molding one time,
Yeah.
it's a quick copy. It's just annoying to draw in CAD initially, but you probably could find moldings, and actually SketchUp would be the way that you'd go about that, because
Yeah.
when we get into SketchUp, oh man, I really want to be in this class instead of history. then then you could export like you could find a country cabinet doors and
Cool.
export it all out and have those details ready to use in CAD as lines that you make a block. So we'll get there. But for her class for this week, just like a few detailed lines and maybe a picture
Okay.
included so that she knows what you're aiming for and it's not just flat, because flat plano is
Okay.
a clear
Yeah.
thing.
You're right. I just didn't know the drawing, how much but we are supposed to put little photos in with our specs. So I
Uh-huh.
was just curious, but got it.
But eventually for your final ones, for the like rendered versions or all those, yeah, you'll want it exactly what it looks like. Not this week, but in the end. All right, so I gotta go. I gotta go to history. If you have questions, that's fine. You can contact me via email. I know the tech stuff is weird and there's gonna be questions, so I'm anticipating that. I will be in next week. I have an appointment at 2 on Monday, but I might do some night hours on Monday, like later hours, and then normal Tuesday lab. And then if you need any other hours, just let me know as well, because I've met with people at 8 o'clock at night or on Saturdays and whatever they need. I'll talk to you later. I gotta go to history. Bye.